Hello, everybody. We are gonna start, and I think more people will join in the next few minutes. But I think we can give it a kick. First, we would like to acknowledge that we are on the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose ancestral lands these informal talks take place. No, this land was never ceded, and today we are very happy to welcome Theo de Meyer coming from Ghent. Another of the colonizers, obviously in Belgium, but like one of the today, Theo, in the end, you are going to be closing the series because a sample will join us in person because we are very lucky that they are here for another person, another kind of talk, for a project in Canberra, and they will join us in the pavilion. So hopefully next time, Theo, we can host you here for a pavilion for doing everything, and perhaps we have a series of artifacts once against each other to discuss some of the things we like, no? And it has been great, and it has been great to be able to host a series of people interested on making things, but making discursive things. I think it's people that like Bunnings. Bunnings is the Australian hardware store, but also like to think what are the consequences or what are the conversation that some of these big objects trigger, no? And I'm very interested on the painful act of construction. No? Theo is one of the people in Europe, in Ghent in particular, that is doing some of the things we like. No, so it's a great pleasure to be able to host him here today. Theo is an architect that lives and works in Ghent, Belgium. He moves between architecture, design, and the arts and teaching, no, as some of us, often reconciling the various disciplines in his projects. He plays with context and scale, interprets and transforms, creating new worlds from the act of building, no, the painful but beautiful act of building. In addition to his work as an architect, de Meyer is also teaching. Collaboration plays an important role in his cross-disciplinary practice. He and their son interior architects together represent the core of the modular collective State of Affairs, who create furniture and architecture in collaboration with specialists in various fields. And today, I think we will have the pleasure to see some of them. Driven by the shared enthusiasm of its member, State of Affairs supports the creation and development of objects, buildings, and ideas. Please join me in welcoming Theo de Meyer for his pavilion of doing everything. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you, Guillermo. Well, do you see my screen?
Yeah, all good. Okay. We can see it with the slides on the bottom. Now full screen.
Voila, voila, voila. Okay, pavilion for doing everything. Thank you, Guillermo. Before I go deeper into what the pavilion is about, I need to go back a little bit back in time. What you see here is a picture of me and my mother when I was young. And as a kid, I was raised in a greenhouse, which was a mid-scale greenhouse. So in the back, you see where it all started, small greenhouse, and then it grew bigger. And this place was run by my father and my mother back in the days. So it was a very nice atmosphere because as a kid, you are very independent raised. And of course, every dream of the father is to take over the business. But I did other things and I started to study construction in Ghent. And you see myself on the left, you start with making mailboxes, and after a while you start to make staircases. And then soon enough you are stacking things, so you learn how a beam works, or maybe a roof coming down on top of a wall. And you end up in this huge warehouse where you learn how to build very technically, how waterproofing. But apart from that side, it's for me, this is a really beautiful picture. It's already a setup of a roof within structures or houses. So one semester it was masonry, the other semester it was wood, where we also made furniture and tables, wood connections, and we started thinking how to build. So it was not usual, but my friend, his father was an architect, so soon enough I started to study architecture in Ghent. I was the worst in theory, but somehow I managed myself through it. And I think I met a professor in my third year. I started to work there. In the beginning, I did some competitions, some models. After a while, I started to help with exhibitions, and I was pointed out to do what I could do best. And again, it was making. So after a while, I was working there for 10 years. You start to be a project architect where not only the making is happening, but you also need to communicate with contractors, with colleagues, with your supervisors. And voila, that's what I was doing for the last 10 years. So apart from that, from making things yourself, working in this kind of construction site, the thinking changes. And at the same time, the way you draw, every drawing you make, even somebody else need to make it. You like to draw as you could make it by yourself. So it's a kind of way of communication, this kind of drawings, which I like. So I was in this atmosphere, doing, and maybe as a kind of first in between point, there were others, but this is good for this lecture. There was this moment that I got the telephone of my father that the business needed to stop. So in the 90s, you had gas prices going up, the tomato prices coming down, and then you need to choose as a business, you grow much bigger or you go smaller or you stay at this. But at that point, it was nearly impossible to keep a business like this. But the good fact is that 75% of the greenhouses in Belgium are empty because there is no new generation who wants to take over this kind of greenhouses. And now even it's worse because of the economy of heating and so on. It's a very difficult period. So what you have then is a rich farmer was the one who had the most greenhouse, but now it's reversed. The rich farmer who has a greenhouse on building land, and we actually had a piece of greenhouse on agricultural field. So the point is it got away, but we kept it in the family. And the nice thing is that this pavilion, it was demolished and then selected very well and sold to another place, and it was rebuilt somewhere else. So the nice thing of greenhouses, you can demolish and you can put it somewhere else. But just to state, that was a kind of in-between moment of doing, and you continue doing, and you, I was living in a kind of greenhouse, and I was working on projects with greenhouses. And the things you see on construction sites, it was, yeah, you start to notice things, how people are making. And for example, here you see tiles which are demolished or are waiting to put again new. And the contractor is just turning the tile 45 degrees because it's more easy for them to take. I met a friend Manor, and at that point, Manor is an artist, and he invited me to do a scenography for an exhibition. And there we ordered 20,000 kilos of tiles. We stacked them, and then after the exhibition, it was taken away again, and it was used for a street pavement in the Netherlands. So in that sense, it was a kind of discovery that we didn't need to pay for the tiles. We got it for free, and afterwards, the scenography was used in a very well way. So this exhibition was one of the first I did with Manor, and then so in another way it continued, and the other one is where we used ventilation tubes, for example. And it became a kind of fascination, almost obsession, was finding materials which has a certain special aspect to it. You can't tell very much why, but sometimes you see something beautiful and you want to take it with you. I started to teach. So first we had the arts and then teaching. So other meanings were coming on top. I met my beautiful girlfriend, which is Stephanie, which you see on the right. She's one of the founding partners of Doorzon Interior Architects, which she is doing together with Caroline, which you see on the left. And even we share the same idea of materials. And when we see things that are feeling special to us, we take pictures of it. You see our daughter on the right. She's an interior architect, and I learned quite a lot from her because I was very much raised into building and then architecture, but interior architecture is a kind of different way of thinking, and it's very much more on a small scale, which was very interesting. And then maybe one key point was also this sofa, which we made. There was no particular reason, but it was my birthday, and she sent me this picture of a cake, but that cake was actually acoustic material. And that was maybe the point where we decided maybe it's good to make a sofa. And on the left, we started to make studies on how to keep this foam, which becomes yellow when it's too much in the sun. We started to coat, but we coated translucent. And by accident, the sofa looked like marble. So somehow the sofa was quite a first success. And we got asked to show it to other places. But then we wanted to show much more because we had more furniture from different projects, and we selected all the furniture that we have been making. But it started to become difficult because, yeah, the cabinet was from me and another friend, the lamp was from me and Manor, as well as the chair. The stool was from Doors on Interior Architects. So we discovered that it's barely that we do everything together at the same time, but it's more like different people or different collaborations at a multiple time, and then it becomes quite interesting. You start to think what to do. Do you want to be a collective? But no, we are independent, so you want to have our freedom to do other collaborations. So we came up with the idea Stand van Zaken. And Stand van Zaken you could see as a state of affairs in between different collaborations. So for example, today could be a state of affairs between Guillermo and Theo, 2022 November. But soon you start to think about it, and you are never alone because you have contractors, you have manufacturers, you have people who write and take pictures from your pieces, investors. So there are so many people you are working with. And Stand van Zaken, we give the title, the first thing. It took 45 people to create 9 pieces of furniture. But just to tell you that Stand van Zaken is more the frame where we like to work in, and we like to set up collaborations because we learn a lot from them. So that moment was we went to museums, we did exhibitions, we did fairs, and we started to organize our own fairs where we started to select exhibitions, excuse me, but we also went to fairs. We were asked to curate a fair and to do a scenography. So where you come from construction and do projects, all of a sudden we arrived in between furniture and fairs, and we started to do atelier visits. And it was very interesting to see what other people were doing apart from what you're doing yourself. And to come on this picture, we were on this kind of good track with it. And we were asked to be in Italy for the Salone dei Mobili. And we were very happy that we could do a pavilion there. And as soon they wanted to give us the fee or the money to build a pavilion, yeah, we all knew there was this period of COVID, so everything was shut down. So from this doing, this kind of constantly doing, we came back to our apartment. So yeah, our apartment is quite small, and we had to find a way to deal with it. We have a small balcony. But all of a sudden you start to imagine public space is your garden, but we were not allowed to be in public space. So we were in a kind of closed atmosphere. So we were dreaming to go to find a little bit of nature, maybe just to find some space. And we went back to that greenhouse, which stopped, which I explained you before. And this idea of nature, I will go back soon, yeah. This idea of nature, what's left, so all those greenhouses are demolished, but what's left is the small part here on the right, this little barn, and together with the house and the water reservoir. So this is actually the thing that stayed there. And the field in the back is now rented out to another farmer, so you can just use it. This house is also rented out, but this place was empty already for years. This is what was left over. And what happened is that, yeah, it became full of trash. And one neighbor was putting a caravan there, the other one was putting this. So it was a kind of very abandoned place, which was very sad. But yeah, it was just waiting until something to happen, but nobody could tell what to happen. Do we sell, yes or no? But it was there. So when you are there, even in this kind of rubbish, you feel that there are certain qualities already arising. And it was very clear that we wanted to do something. And we asked our family if we were allowed to put a tent there just during the COVID period. It was just only one summer. And the deal was that we would clean out that pavilion. And that's what we did. We enjoyed ourselves, actually. Until you arrive to a greenhouse, which was a beautiful open structure. And then you see what you have in front of you. And that was quite an amazing thing. So it's not easy because the pavilion is not ours, or the greenhouse is not ours. So how can you claim something that is not yours? So we started with a tent, But soon enough, we wanted to have more. We were very enthusiastic. And then we said, okay, look, we will put in the middle a curtain. So we will only use this part. So the other part could be used for other things. But it's only a mental thing because it was not used by anything. But this first curtain that we placed was already the first act of claiming what was not ours. It was very, so this place started already. We started to play there with the kids and be there with water, what you see. And already in this first month, we started to dream further on, and we could imagine a swimming pool. We could imagine a place to sleep. We could imagine a kitchen, a table, and so on, until we arrived to the point how to make it. And back in the days, every fill-in structure within the greenhouse was made with bricks. They have been, they have been made themselves by my father and my grandfather. So the evident thing to do was to think in bricks, because it's also quite cheap. So we started to draw structures in bricks, and until we arrived to kind of first scheme on the left of the curtain, you see the action of the swimming pool, the roof. We wanted to have planters because it's a concrete floor, which is already there. We wanted to have a kitchen, and that's where we started to do. We contacted a company who delivers brick. It was Wienerberger. We convinced them to sponsor. So they delivered all the brick for free, and then we could start to building ourselves. We are not that good in masonry, because you also need to have straight lines and then ropes. We started to think how could do it ourselves, and then we came to a brick that was easy to glue. So we asked a friend to put a first layer with mortar, and afterwards it was just us stacking things on top of each other. Even our daughter helped. It was fun. It was actually fun. But then you start to know the material, and gluing bricks, you have so less margin, so meaning it was difficult to cut our stones. So the detail what you see here was just a matter for us just to stack and not to cut. That's the reason why have this kind of things. So coming there, we slowly evolved to a kind of half construction site. We started to sleep there. We enjoyed the space, and until you arrive from an abandoned place to a construction site where you sleep in between. So this was middle summer, and then we had friends coming over who started also to be enthusiastic because they were also within their small apartment. So it became a kind of atmosphere of doing things together. But we also had people who stated, or who were wondering, what are you doing there? Why are you doing it? It's not yours. Why should you invest money? But once they are there, you start to feel that the reason why you do it is just because it was really nice to do it. So we arrived at middle summer and summer at our first small greenhouse project, where we started to invite people, and we were there in the weekends and so on. But then, the idea of it's only for one summer, it's expanded to, COVID started to become much longer. So we inhabited the greenhouse more. And we also discovered not mistakes, but things that we could not foresee before. And for example, in one corner, it's more fresher, it's more windy. In the other corner, it's raining. So we started to adapt the things what we have thinking before. We added insulated cabinets, for example, because it's too warm in the summer, and those insulated cabinets are helping us to protect the food in our fridge. Because it's so warm in the summer, we moved a kitchen towards underneath the roof, the covered space. So we call this our summer kitchen. But in the evening, the sun is away, so the temperature is very much perfect, almost. It's like a veranda. So then we cook there, and we have instead of a fridge, we have a garden directly behind our kitchen. The wild idea of the swimming pool, we have been working on that one for 3 weeks almost with 2 persons. But you think you can do it yourself, but after a while you need to admit that a swimming pool, to make it work, it's quite technical things, and it's also quite a huge investment. So we were there with our swimming pool. So we decided to make a shower out of it. We like the idea that you don't need a lot of water to have a kind of freshness, and at the same time the sound of the shower is very nice as a fountain. This is our place where we sleep. We added a roof because it was raining in our bedroom, but at the same time, it protects us from the sun. We added a chimney in winter, a fireplace, because we can't heat the space. So we are really living with the temperature outside. But the moment the sun is coming in, it's perfect. But when it's coming away, you need to heat a little bit. But it's impossible to do full heating. So we protect ourselves around that fireplace. And we made these kind of benches with high backrests. And it really helps us to protect us a little bit more from the fire, or we are more into the heating. Yeah, you remember that I was telling that we were doing this exhibition in Milano and we proposed a long table. We wanted to make it, so we made it. And then we introduced a long table in our greenhouse. But then we started to contact other friends. And for example, this lightning piece is from Arno Eublen. And he added this piece above our table. So now it's a kind of interesting collaboration. And he selected from all the materials within the greenhouse, he made this kind of lightning. So this is glass from the greenhouse, but also these kind of things. It's just to hang the tomatoes with the ropes. And it was cool. Also, Bram van der Beek, a friend of ours, he was helping us in the summer pouring concrete within this swimming pool. With some bricks, he casted some a new piece, which he collected around the column. So yeah, it was very cool because you like to have pieces, but once you make pieces or you do these kind of things in the pavilion, you can do exchanges, and incredible things are existing. And again, Manor, I have a lot to thank about him. So he contacted me and he asked me if he could have an atelier visit from somebody he saw on the internet, which was Philippe Vervaat. And we visited his atelier. We had a lot of talks about nature. His work is about how to make nature, how we make nature. We had talks about how gardens, front gardens in the landscapes are being made, this kind of perfect bushes, and then the Greek statue. But at the same time, we have this kind of irony or romanticizing our landscape. So we were very much in the practical sense. We need to have a swimming pool. We need to have that. But it was Philippe who contacted us. Look, I got money from the government to do something. I am too late. We only have 1 month. I need to finish all the money. We should do it now. Shouldn't we do it together? So at that moment, it was for the first time that I was invited by artists, sculptors, to think about a sculpture that has no particular function, let's say. So yeah, Philippe came with a kind of paravent, with a kind of room divider. He added a sculpture which was a plant which consisted out of different plants, and he made a new plant. This is Manor who made benches on which you see a kind of program, but it's a painting. And I was there to think about a certain scenography. And the scenography was a kind of field of bricks, but you could read it as an Italian square with a fountain. But you could also see it as the Monet water pond where you have a bridge on top of it. So somehow this kind of platform brought together all of our pieces. So the first claim, we will only stay behind the curtain. All of a sudden we took the other part, which becomes more of a kind of in-between zone where we can do exhibitions and so on. So there was a kind of interesting balance in between that. Until we arrived to our living room in the back, but also our exhibition room in the front. But at the same time, both work together. So function and sculpture came together at that point. But for me, it was very interesting because what you see here, this plant, is that Philippe claims that we don't have nature, but all our nature is made by ourselves. So in that sense, he collected different kind of leaves and he made a kind of new plant out of it. But Manor, it was also very interesting what he did. He hung 2 paintings against the greenhouse. And what you see is a painting of Monet. And in front of it, he added a layer of a person who is laying in the field, who has leisure in between, this kind of romanticizing nature. And romanticizing nature, if you start to think about it, we had the same, because this pond, as a kid, we were swimming in there. So it was this kind of leisure in working came together at that point. And now the pond is empty. But while we were there in the greenhouse, all of a sudden there was a farmer with 2 trucks, and he brought a long hose from 1 kilometer long, and all of a sudden he was taking away water from it. It was very long, and then we started to understood that he used it while in dry season to spray his fields. So it was a beautiful thing in the landscape, because somehow you had a fountain, a kind of industrial fountain in this landscape. The problem is that this farmer only thought about his vegetables, and he didn't care at all about our water reservoir. So he took it all empty. We had somehow a fight, but somehow we come to the conclusion is that actually, or we did a study, or we got to know, is that there is a problem in the Flemish field, that there are too less of the water reservoirs, especially nowadays when we have so much dried. So we came to the conclusion is that maybe it's good that this water reservoir is used, but the only deal is that after every act, they need to refill it. So they come with trucks and use it from the canal, and they bring it into the water reservoir. So what we had before was an abandoned place. This abandoned place became a field that could be used from a farmer, the house that is rented out to a family. This water reservoir can be used to the neighbors, and we are here somehow as the small protectors of the whole site. But it's all about care, because when we are not there, they just run over the place, and it becomes really a nasty place. So also from Philippe and Manuel, I learned a lot, because for me, artists think different than architects and vice versa, but it's good to stay open with that. And while doing these kind of things, saying yes, Philippe brought me in contact with a museum, Middelheim Museum in Antwerp, and they brought me in contact with an artist which is called Camille Henrot. But for example, this piece of her, it's about grief. And in this park, it's quite a huge park. So they have a fixed collection of maybe 300 sculptures. But at a certain moment, she added 50 sculptures. So the question was, how can you make a division in a park between 50 sculptures of the exhibition of Camille and the 300 others? So we came to the conclusion that maybe it could be interesting to make a certain new landscape. And within this landscape, you have rooms where you walk through, but these rooms can also be used for picnic and other things. And it was quite amazing, because we had this kind of talks and how we deal with nature. And if you think about parks, how parks are being made, they cut the grass every week. But now we discussed with the green department to maybe stop cutting the grass of the park and to think about a different way of growing the grass. So just maybe let it grow. So this exhibition started to be, even it was a scenography, but it was the first act of thinking on how to change the park. And if you look to the work of Camille Henrot, you look to this picture, this is a tapestry from the medieval tapestry, where every flower is very drawn precisely, and every flower what you see is a real flower. But her work is at the same time about human and animals. And we arrived to a park with sculptures, a new landscapes of flowers, and it was quite a big change. And I think the idea of landscaping is what we do as well. And we start to see our greenhouse as a landscape of furniture. Maybe you could see a landscape of bricks. And what we also do is, here you see Stephanie working in the back. But sometimes we are in the other corner cooking, and we are, as kind of nomads, we are moving in between our structure. And maybe it's something that we learned in Italy, where we used to go in summer. And it was a friend of ours. He had a plot and we sleep here. The bathroom is also there. There is a small storage space. There's a swimming pool in between. There's another house here and the kitchen is there. So why we like to be there is because when it's warm, you just live outside, but you move in between different buildings instead of different rooms. And there is one house which you could be higher, and then you have this kind of overview of your site. But it's very much what we see happening in our greenhouse as well. Coming to another project is that a client of ours asked, they have a house which is on the first floor. It's kind of bel etage, looking towards the garden. Nothing really happens in the garden, but there's an old greenhouse in there, and they asked what to do with that greenhouse. So our proposal was maybe you could have an outside space in your garden. So we could renovate a small part of the greenhouse. You have an outside bedroom, you have maybe an outside shower, maybe you put a bench to activate a small piece of garden. And let's think about how to make a connection between your house and that garden that it's very that you can start use again. We like to travel. We have seen this staircase in Istanbul. But at that point, we came to a kind of object-wise addition to the house. And actually this, you see the neighbors are looking into them. So we needed to have a garden wall. So the garden wall became a structure from the staircase, and the staircase became the garden wall as such. So we have two terraces now. And yeah, this structure is also used for gardens, for greenery. But coming back to Istanbul, this is the Hagia Sophia. It came to my understanding that the Hagia Sophia was first is a mosque that was first a church. And of course, the church has its own logic, but the mosque has another logic, which has to turn to Mecca. So there's a kind of shift of objects between a very logical shift within the structure. Comparing it to our greenhouse, I like to think that there's a certain, you have a roof and you have a new structure in between. And another place where you could find that roof, it's all because of that greenhouse. A friend of ours, Sibren, has seen that. He also has an atelier, and he asked, can you provide a structure where I can live in? And the moment he got this atelier, you started to see that he started inhabiting already. So the sofa, the racks, and so on. And when you are walking around that place, you see pieces of Ponomarenko because it's within a gallery. It's an art storage space. And these legs are, for example, of this beautiful piece of Ponomarenko. But around you also see pieces of Jan de Kok. It's a storage place, so they have a lot of racks. If you look to the work of Sibren, we started to think about a house made out of racks. And the logic was that if you have a visit, you want to sleep higher, nobody needs to be in your bedroom, but underneath you needed to have storage. And the way of positioning in between the structure, so Sibren is the only one who has a door towards a small garden. So we positioned this pavilion in this corner because the moment you enter here, you have a small kitchen, and then you go underneath, and then you are in this atelier. And then the rest is storage and tables. And so it becomes a kind of new landscape of how to inhabit such a big space. We started to draw, and the whole structure was made in 3 days, 3 persons. So this is the kitchen, how you enter. You go underneath and you have a first glimpse in a small space, what's happening above. Until you turn over where you see a kind of strange object there. When you're going up to the staircase is movable. He can also use to hang his paintings. Or he can put the staircase away while maybe he doesn't want people to go upstairs, but here's his bedroom. And the moment now he uses it, that's not the best picture, but now it's full of storage. It becomes a rack again. The object, the house becomes a rack. And this is, for example, an exhibition that they did, was an overview of Ponomarenko, and I was very happy that they confronted this work of Ponomarenko with the structure. And somehow it functions in the same way, or it belongs together, even if it doesn't belong. And once you get to know Ponomarenko, it was this famous museum director, Jan Hoet in Belgium. And he explained what he liked about Ponomarenko, and he told that the moment I go to an airplane and I look to an airplane, I don't believe that it can fly. But the moment I look to Ponomarenko, I believe that it can fly. So that's the difference about believing and knowing. And we like this idea of the change of perception, because it is a house and it's not a house. It is an ashtray in that sense. Sorry, it is an ashtray, but it's not an ashtray because now we use it for table legs. It is a fireplace and it looks like a face, but it's not a face. And here we find this kind of roof tiles, which they used for ventilation roof, but to ventilate the roof, but at the same time, they belong together, although they have nothing to do with each other. So we arrived also in this mental idea of changing perception of objects. And this change of perception is maybe already a tradition in Ghent, because what you see here is Andrea Branzi put this huge face within the center of the design museum. And before summer, we were asked to do a scenography for the new museum of Design Museum, and our title was Objects of Celebration. It's a courtyard, and actually they want to move out the museum because they want to build a new part. And they wanted to celebrate the museum for one last time. So we added actually everything what we found in the storage. We started to make new structures with it. We got lucky that we could do the whole museum, but more especially, this is the entrance where you enter the kind of courtyard. But this courtyard is no property from the museum, but actually it's property from the city of Ghent. So this is public space, but there's a kind of in between. It looks private, but actually it's public. It's very interesting. Here at this point, there's a kind of, backside, but it's very visible. But here, trucks they need to deliver, and here is the new museum. So the first act, what we did is to find out places that are not very much used or very well used. And we start to inhabit them in certain ways. So instead of selling tables, we start to rent now tables. And this hallway became now a room for meetings. So this long table fitted very perfectly in there. Then we found in the design museum a lot of chairs in the stock in the warehouse that were not used. So we have different chairs instead of the same chairs. We like the way they use this kind of gates. So we actually proposed to have a new entrance there. Instead of a back entrance, we made a new entrance, a front entrance. So it was a copy of that gate. And the other entrance, we just added 2 gates. So we continued in that idea of gates. We found a mock-up which there was used for the new museum facade. And from that mock-up, we started to make a kind of ticketing, and we found a huge rack which became a facade. We started to make furniture until we arrived in this courtyard full of objects and bars. And so actually this courtyard, which is actually public and now is private, became somehow an in-between zone. It was giving back to the city. And for this whole period of the festival, it worked very well because everybody could enter very freely. It became a bar. So it was a kind of change of this place. And out of appreciation, somehow, the museum and the city decided to keep this gate as a symbol of this new gate towards this courtyard, or maybe the new entrance towards the museum. So for us, it's also about structure and how to claim and maybe spaces that are not very much well used to give them a kind of new meaning. And maybe to finalize with the last project, the fountain could also be seen as an object that activates a certain space. Or maybe a statue could work at the same way. And we were asked to Yeah, we were asked, actually, Stefanie and I live in a small apartment, but our office is upstairs. So every morning we walk half an hour to that coffee bar to drink a coffee. We discuss a few things and then we walk back and then we start our office. But by being in this coffee bar every week, the owner was very enthusiastic and he said, look, Theo, I want to have a new terrace outside. So we started to have a discussion, but it was not an easy corner because here you have a bus stop and then bikes are coming, people are walking through. So we started to think maybe we should, maybe I'm too fast. We discovered actually that people don't use the terrace, but are sitting on the other side of the street because here it's north and here is the sunny side. So people didn't sit on the terrace, but they sit everywhere around. So we came to a discussion, shouldn't we think about public furniture that could be your terrace, but at the same time, it could be used by the street. So this was very referential for us. It's a statue on a square, but the way how it's made, the way how the person is sitting here and the person is sitting there, it's kind of very interesting duality. So this proposal was just to copy the facade. So this balcony became the backrest, and maybe you have a high backrest because then you have a kind of wind protector. At the same way it functions at the piece of furniture which was around our fireplace. We wanted to have a fountain. We wanted to have another bench which has two backs, and this bench is referring to that facade. So it became a kind of play of city facades and furniture. We were thinking how facades have been made nowadays. So for example, this is a fake facade. It's just plaster on top of this foam, and every corner detail, it's just made out of foam. It's recycled foam. And we find a guy who make Greek facades for Greek restaurants, and he is very talented in how to do fake stoning and so on. Remember the sofa where we did the studies of how to make translucent to look at the materials, and this guy started to draw fake marble, but we ended up just using the insulation, and he carved this fountain already by hand. So we ended up with this furniture which looks like marble, but it's not. It's made out of foam. And the reason why it's made out of foam is because Ghent has one rule, is that terrace furniture should be movable by one person, which is very interesting because you can't think about heavy pieces of furniture. But we made it in foam, so we stated that it's not heavy, so it's movable by one person. And for the first moment when it was there, it was somehow kind of a shock for the neighborhood. They started to, they were not sure what they were looking at. Is it now art, kitsch, or design, crazy terrace, and so on. After a while, people got used to it, but COVID came to a certain end, and all the restaurants and bars were claiming public space with their terraces, and they forgot that there was only one rule, that it should be movable by one person. So every terrace in Ghent was taken away that was not movable by one person. So it was a kind of huge fuss in press. Why should I move away and Labat should not move away? And it was a kind of fight in between. So the mayor got very nervous. But the only problem was in law, in the rule, our pieces were movable by one person because it was made out of foam. And so it was a kind of, we somehow hacked the system. They all got very nervous, and after a while, the mayor decided to skip this main rule, and now terraces in Ghent are allowed to keep their pieces, not to move as one person. But at the same time, they stated that a bench can now also be a planter. To tell you that I forgot to tell you, the city also came to ours that we should demolish. But as it was movable by one person, they invented a rule that this terrace was not the definition of a chair, but that rule did not exist. So they were inventing things because we made problems. So yeah, sorry for that. They decided, everybody happy, everybody in Ghent, we can keep the terrace. And it's actually quite fun. So you start to see that the way it functions, it doesn't differ so much from what's happening in city and real life. Also, how public space is organized, very messy, but I admire this picture, how people are looking. It's kind of strange dialogue. And that's actually what we do in this kind of greenhouse, is scaling, and the topics what I brought up to the front. So then, to finalize this talk, it's our greenhouse is our atelier. We experiment a lot. It became our office. We like to treat our plants, especially Stephanie. It's a place for workshops. It's our showroom. Now it's easy when somebody walks in and he sees a piece, I buy it. We teach there. We invite people there to have debates. And sometimes we even organize dinners. And now the act of cleaning dishes is a very nice thing even. So it also becomes a kind of domestic space. And thinking about my family, this house in the back you see, this is the house of my grandparents. You should imagine that this building, they have been working there for, she's now 80 years. So maybe that's 60 years of business that needed to stop. For them, it's quite painful to look at every day. But now she is, she's giving water to the plants every day. So it's a kind of new renewal of energy within this family, within this neighborhood, which is quite an amazing feeling. So if I look to what I'm doing today, it doesn't differ at the same time from what I was doing when I was 12. And it's all about continuing in a certain loop of doing, and things are existing. And that's why we call it a pavilion for doing everything. Thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you, Theo. It was a fantastic talk. I think some of the things we saw in Sydney last time when you visit online as well, but it's very rounded today, no? As a talk and as a continuation of how the practice keeps making, keeps collaborating, keeps making mistakes, keeps making trouble, and keeps making this an incredible practice to look at and to see. Theo, if you think I'm going to open up because some of my students are here, and I accuse them constantly of not taking enough risk, of not relaxing enough, because to build some of the discussions, and I think it was very nice when you were explaining about the pool, how a skill is our labor, despite we think we can do it, and every time we start building things with the class, it takes us always more time. We do a few mistakes, which is fine. It's part of it, I think. But I think, and also with sometimes we just need to add for actual specialists on certain things, and I think it's very nice to recognize that limits and learn how to recognize them and learn where we can actually do it and where we cannot. So let's see if anybody has any questions. Guys, anybody? A ver, I see some of you, Deborah, Amy. They are silent. Kashin, I see you as well. Ryan, Sam, Alvis. Nobody? Venga, guys, you've been painting with a podcast all day, which I think is a way of doing nothing, but also doing everything. Some of you have been drilling stuff, and you have realized that the holes have too much tolerance to the Theo, so we have to repeat it, which is also part of it. And then everything is designed also for this assembly, as you say, Theo. We have the intention to resell part of the timber, or some of the things are all with the standard dimensions, and we are accepting some of the ornament that comes from it. We are also copying from things because some other people have already thought how things are built, and we will send you some of these things shortly. But guys, do you have any questions? Venga, or Ed, that you are also there, like some former students that in Sydney now, there is more people doing things. There is Ed that's rocks and fake rocks, and he was also part of the talk series. If not, I go. It's difficult. They don't now everybody was very enthusiastic with Zoom in the beginning, but now everybody is a little bit more shy. But I don't know. I think it
Guillermo,
was. Sorry.
No worries. I know how that goes. Huh?
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, but no, they are actually good. I'm very happy with them as a group. We are growing together. You know how difficult it is to collaborate to build something. 17 people with different taste, different skills, and we both absolutely everything, which sometimes has been funny, and some of the decisions we need to embrace. Some of the things I push and that, but it has been a very, very interesting journey together, and we keep going. But coming back to the work, I think it was, I don't know, I think is ever gonna stop your pavilion or not, Theo? Or do you think it will stop? No.
I was a bit shocked, and maybe that's also why I introduced my grandmother. She last 3 weeks she stopped watering the plants, and I'm a bit worried. And I have the impression, as long as my grandmother lives, the pavilion will stay. And I'm curious what will happen if she will pass away. It will be a shift in idea. But somehow it's all about insecurity. We are not sure. And every time I think I need to talk about it, I want to be sure. But you feel that this moment you want to have that, it doesn't work like that. You can't tell me now what I can do. It doesn't work. So it's somehow about accepting, which is not easy. In that sense, we try to believe that it will lead to other things in the future. Because every project we have been seeing now, it happens in the time frame of the greenhouse. So a lot of things happened. So yeah, it would be a pity. So we are worried, but still at the same time accepting somehow. Yeah.
And there will be other, perhaps different pavilion. But I think on this one, Theo, I would like to read it also as something that could happen with the suburbs or with the suburbia in Australia or also in Belgium. How you were saying this is such a difficult hole because your grandma's house, there used to be a production activity there, that there is no production anymore. The water pond that completely artificial, but at the same time used to irrigate. And I think how these pieces that you are drawing within your plan are also happening at a bigger scale. And perhaps we can read them as new fragments of the city, where the production, the complicated relationship with nature, the ecologies and that, we could imagine things like that, like as the summer house in Italy, perhaps you move to your grandma's house and this one becomes your summer house, and or then this one becomes you suddenly win a big commission and this becomes your office, or I don't know. And I think and more people will start to perhaps to have a different kind of that. I don't know. I think it's a good one to read that. It still opens up very possibilities very clearly for your practice, how each of the projects can be read within there, and they are part of a time frame, as you are mentioning. But I don't know. I think it's fascinating to see it.
Yeah, and it just happens because we did not choose, or there was not the idea. We only wanted to put a tent, but it was very nice to accept. To accept it and just go keep on doing. And claiming, as you said, maybe we will move in the house of my grandmother, but somehow I was thinking, shouldn't I buy the house and make an Airbnb out of it? Something like this. I don't know. It could be amazing. Yeah, but yeah, look, we are very happy at this moment. And nice. It's also somehow at the same time a struggle, because what we are doing right now, for an architect, it's not real architecture, and for an artist, it's not real art. So we are in this kind of gray zone, but at the same time, we find ourselves in a certain comfort, which is incredible.
But I think that gray zone is definitely very interesting, And I think as architects, we are always worried when we get into the artist realm, And I think, perhaps we are not, and perhaps it's just bad art, or perhaps it's not. But I think how it's linked to certain craft. Even craft is a difficult word, but how it's linked to construction and the making of it, I think that's a very interesting layer. And I think that distinction now is so much more diffuse, And I think it's true that most of your commissions are coming very clearly from the realm of art, and I think it would be interesting that they were more mixed, Like they were still But I think it's very nice how you are bringing into the institutions that domesticity, but at the same time that publicness, and how you are breaking the boundaries within these huge pieces of furniture or very small architectures or artifacts that are not easy to categorize. And I think that's what allows them to have certain freedom, and that allows them to perform and perhaps being slightly awkward. And some of them are slightly ugly, and that's probably okay. And some of them are, you say, no, I don't know, if you never know, no, you play, there is certain irony without too much, which I think is nice. Sometimes when there are too many jokes, I particularly don't enjoy it. I think there is a very nice tension there between these pieces. I don't know, I think it since Belgium, there is the space for your practice to evolve, but probably we fetishize it from both Australia and Spain, that you have more sophisticated clients or better institutions, but probably it's not the case when you are there, and you also struggle as a practice, no? Like here is, I don't know what is the current status there. I haven't been in a while.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. It's the same situation everywhere. Because somehow, for example, the coffee bar, can you imagine finding a kind of person who is willing to take such, I can call it a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk.
He said, yes, let's do it. And he was not holding my pen or whatsoever. It was a kind of, and I feel that I need to find these kind of persons who say, okay, let's go. And we go. And that's also what I felt with Philippe. I have money, I need to finish in 1 month, let's go. And then magical things are happening. So it's finding these kind of persons.
Yeah, the right person, the right moment, no, and letting it happen, no.
Yeah, but even also within these exhibitions with furniture, we also, and first you start, should we do this exhibition? Is it well enough? Is it famous enough or whatsoever? And actually we met a guy who said you should say yes all the time in that sense. Even if it's a bad exhibition, it will lead to another one.
But when you do it yourself, there is also the problem of labor, no? I also say yes to everything, and I'm trying to learning to say no to some things, no? Like sometimes it's not, but it's hard because you never know which one is the project that is going to lead to something else, or you never know which one, and that's you never know, and you never know which one is the client that actually there is an incredible relationship, or the material that suddenly you can get something out of it. So it's hard to learn to say no, or perhaps we don't have to. I don't know.
It's something we need to learn how to find this kind of balance. This maybe also we are romanticizing our work at this moment, no? But,
yeah.
No, yeah. Actually, I think in Belgium, I'm somehow happy, but it's also very narrow thinking sometimes in Belgium at the same time. Because we are used sometimes what you see, this kind of bricks and beams, it becomes also a style somehow.
Yeah, it has been stylized too much, no? And I think there needs to be a critique. I think it was very important, obviously, when it happened. It refreshed the panorama of Europe post-global financial crisis. But I think people, and I explain the students, this Belgium building is good. This Belgium building is not necessarily good. They like exposing the brick and painting a steel beam doesn't mean that it's good architecture per se. Some of the buildings are good and some of them are not. And there are, and I think do you think that criticality is possible to exist within the context and perhaps evolve a little bit, or do you think it's difficult?
Well, actually, how I was raised in the Veldering-Tailleux, people are copying sometimes the Veldering-Tailleux, but when you are working in this atmosphere, it's not about that idea of style, but it's more about logics and economics. So even something that doesn't look logical, actually it's quite logical. For example, this greenhouse, I could think that my grandmother is not understanding at all what I'm doing there, but at the same time, she's understanding very well because it's just two bricks on top of each other. And that's, so the form just follows what needs to happen in that sense.
I think the economy of means and the construction is what is important, I think, in some of these things. And I think when some of these things become incredibly expensive to build just to replicate a certain style, it's stupid. And I think we need to be aware of some of these things. And we mentioned, no, I think it's important to be able to have that discussion. And I think it seems that the Belgian coast is mature enough, but but we will see. I think there is also and still I think it's much better than anywhere else. And we are sometimes very jealous to see some of the things that come from there, because I still think there is still new practices always. Some of them perhaps not adding too much, but at least there is like a big number, and like that, probably you have more sophisticated clients that can also understand your work, and then there is better institutions because if there is certain culture that I think gets very embedded into the country, which I think eventually allows to big changes to happen. So I think we also need to be we need to be critical of it, and I am particularly of that, but we also need to be optimistic to read it as a wider thing, I think.
Yeah. And for example, this Arno Oebling guy, you should all check the students. It's amazing what he's doing, for example, the way how he collects things and he combines it in a structural way.
Yes, and
so
I have Arno's book here, and I have
yeah.
So you are going next week to see Sam and Arno, no? Where they have also found in Berlin their area, no? You were saying.
Sorry, if I go to Arno next week?
You said you were going to see Brandhuber.
Yeah. But what I like with those guys, for example, is the way of thinking. They are going against institutionalization. No, it's it's super cool. And also Sam Shermayev, the way how he treats his furniture, it's like a quick way of thinking. No, I need that, I put that, and then it's finished.
And it's done. It's like things put together. No, that's. I think there is people, there is things there, and I think I think somebody wanted to ask a question or not. If not, I think
I had one question. If you.
Hi Ed, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for the talk. I tuned in a bit late. But I had a question around it being like, do you feel uncomfortable, like less comfortable or more comfortable when with this Pavilion project it's completely self-led? Like you're obviously your client. Like, is that too open-ended for you, or is that like quite joyful, if that makes sense?
Joyful. But the only problem is now it's our money, so it's uncomfortable at the same time. So yeah.
But I think that freedom even force your creation even more, no? Because you are paying for it, so you don't do things that. But at the same time, it cannot constrain you too much, no? It's both, I think.
Yeah, I think it's very nice to have this place for ourselves, and also to allow other people to join in and to have a kind of open atmosphere of thinking about or experimenting. And when you have a client, the experiment, it's a different kind of the experiment. So I would say yes, in a fast manner, that I'm feeling comfortable in this place, that it's ours. Yeah. But I don't know if this serves exactly your question, Ed.
I think that not your question is more like about being your own client or working for somebody else, and how to manage. I think. Yeah, you go.
Just with obviously, if you do, I don't know, if you do define yourself as an architect or more open-ended than that, like, yeah, and you're trying to do something slightly different, I guess. Like I guess it's completely open-ended. It's like a place of freedom, but then I don't know if that's always a good thing. But no, you answered my question. Sorry.
Maybe it's a bit of a strange perception sometimes. In our office, we are actually very precise, and I mean super precise. And the way that the pieces of furniture are positioned, or the structures, it's about centimeters even. And in the practice, it's sometimes difficult to explain this duality that you should be precise, and it's not just two bricks on top of each other, but it's also what does it do, those two bricks on top of each other. And that's it's different than what you call freedom. It's more talking with people, trying to make them understand and really look what you are doing, apart from look about this is stones and bricks on top of each other, so it looks a certain style. We are not talking about styles, we are talking about different things. And that's a little bit the game. And the nice thing is in this greenhouse is that we have a kind of showroom where we can explain these kind of ideas what we have, and that works even to get new projects, to talk about this kind of thin layers. And Guillermo, I liked what you said, is that some pieces are ugly. It's completely true. For example, the coffee bar, yeah, you could debate about that, but every discussion, so this was really the worst. The architects had like, whoa, but he's a good designer. He's a good designer, but I like it, but I like it when people are on top of it. So there was this, but for me, this was really the project that I did not care at all about this, because this is about aesthetics, and that means that you don't look really to what's happening there. So for me, it's about that. But sometimes you could overthink, and then I think, is it necessary? If I look to, for example, Bram van der Beek, this amazing pieces of furniture, it's not with meaning. It's just a very skilled person, but he's also going in a kind of traject, but it's his traject. Sometimes I feel that I need to upload it with ideas or certain change or activism. I don't want to call it, I don't want to be an activist, but somehow things are happening with this kind of design. So we like to believe that we are more non-designing, and we use design to non-design, actually, in that sense. Yeah, voilà.
I think that's a great way to finish, and I think it was very enjoyable to see all the work again. And I think hosting you at the University of Sydney, where it's funny that in 2 lectures in Australia for Theo, which I, as a young non-designer, so it's great to see that people appreciate your work here. And I think I don't know, I think there is a lot to think and a lot of keep making, and Theo, we would like to thank you a lot, and hopefully we can make something together at some point. And thanks for joining us from your pavilion of doing everything, which is the perfect place to teach. But it would have been nice to give a lecture, and also as you say, like as a showroom, and how this thing could open, but also as a city, I would like to imagine it. So Theo, thanks very much for spending your time and for your great talk. Everybody's clapping. They were shy, but now they clap. Virtual clap.
And good luck to everybody, I would say.
Yes, guys, good luck this last week, and thanks very much for joining us every week. We have last week Momoyo Kayama, previous one Takeshi Hayatsu. Takeshi also doing incredible work, and we will close with the secret one, probably at the Pavilion of Doing Nothing very shortly. Okay, thanks very much for joining. Finish well the semester, guys, and thanks, Theo. Have a good day. Ciao, Theo.
Ciao, ciao.
I stay 1 second.
Yeah, good.
Let me